As we enter the most recent era of the band, newer technology was available to document our activities. In fall 1992, I videoed scenes at rehearsals and at the Friday night ball game. Here are excerpts from what you might call 2 days with the Central Marching Band, October 1992. Here's Norman in a typical rehearsal on our parking lot practicing the pregame show.
Well, now today, let's go through the whole bit.
We go over the pregame show, and we do a run-through of the halftime show. The drum major was Mary Joan Hamby. Two excellent trumpet players, David Holder and Jeff Roberts. Andy Coleman, another great player, was the band captain that year, made All-State Jazz Band, and joined the family printing firm, Coleman's, on Broadway, not far from the school. Later in the band room, the students gather for instructions from Norman about senior night, the annual fruit sale, and the upcoming ball game. There's a bit of a story behind Red and Black. The version that Odell Willis wrote in the 1930s has to be one of the only school fight songs anywhere that is in 6/8 time. When Norman came in 1971, he told me that the older students had generally been teaching the song to the younger students, and he couldn't even find an entire set of parts to use. So, Norman hired his old friend Barry McDonald to write a new arrangement, still in 6/8 time. The band successfully used this 1971 arrangement for a couple of decades. Due to changing styles in marching band music, the 6/8 version began to sound a bit dated and could not be played at what was considered an exciting tempo by the standards of the 1970s. One of Norman's assistants in the late 70s suggested that if the tune were reworked into 2/4 time, it would be more effective as a pep song. Norman gave the assistant, Charles Torian, the okay to make an attempt at a new version. Norman liked the new arrangement, but only used it on rare occasions throughout the 70s and 80s. As time passed, the 2/4 version increasingly began to seem more appropriate for the times, and Norman asked me to rescore the 2/4 version to sound fuller and to fit the current band better. I'm not sure of the year, but sometime after 1990, we began to use the 2/4 version exclusively. Here's the 1992 band playing my adaptation of Charles Torian's 2/4 arrangement. And now we're at the ball game, lining up for pregame. And now the halftime performance.
Central High School marching band, one of the state's finest.
The concert band, all 109 of them, earned straight superiors that spring on an original suite, and we took another Florida trip that April. The 1993-1994 group again earned superiors in grade 5 with an even larger band, 121 on stage at Concert Festival. The jazz band was particularly excellent during this period, with several students making the all-state jazz band. Andy Coleman made it on trombone in '93, Jeff Roberts on trumpet in '94, but Matt McClure made the group 3 times. He was second alto in '92 and lead alto in both '93 and '94. As a saxophone player myself, I have to say that Matt was one of the best students I've ever had on any instrument. He was not a Gresham student. Colbert Petrie started him at Northwest. Matt went to UT, was a band director in Kentucky for several years, and is now teaching at the college level. The other student here is Jeff Roberts. Another of my best students. Jeff was one of the trumpet players in the video of the 1992 marching band. I did start Jeff as a beginner, though. He was at Sturkey Elementary School during the mid-'80s. Jeff was an exceptional player even at a young age, winning many honors. He went to UT and is believed to be the only Central graduate to ever be the drum major of the UT band. He later spent several years in the Air Force and is now an FBI agent in South Carolina.
My name is Jeff Roberts. I started trumpet in the 4th grade at Sturkey Elementary School. David Dixon was the first teacher I had on that, and got even more interested in it. And my grandmother created a book, and she would write everything from a TV song to old jazz tunes like In the Mood or St. Louis Blues, or just over the summer between 4th and 5th grade. I just practiced all those kind of things. And I think
I remember you showing me that book.
I still have it. I can't even imagine what Mr. Dixon thinks, having what this little, I think I was about 3 feet tall. I was 9 years old or 8 years old, coming in that hot music room at Sturkey Elementary School.
Like so many students before him, Jeff has vivid memories of Norman Woodall and his influence.
He was tough sometimes. He treated you in a lot of ways like you were not just a student. No, he most certainly never talked down to people. He expected a lot of you, and he would bring that out in you. We had some really musical people, certainly Matt McClure, Jeff Mize, Andy Coleman, Julie Luttrell, Sarah Beth Nordmo. There were some really accomplished musicians.
And Norman continued to teach the students much more than music.
I think it was a really good way to teach those things, because while I learned a lot about music, and I certainly would have been prepared to do anything musically I wanted to do, I feel confident in that, my path went other ways. It went to the military, it went in the FBI, it went different places. But lessons he taught us, the values, I use. I really look to that. There's a lot of times, just like you're always supposed to think about what would your father think, what would your mother think, your grandmother. I think a lot of people would add Norman Woodall to that. What would he think about me doing this in this situation? I think a lot of people wanted him to be proud of them, because there was nothing like when he was proud of you. And there was equally nothing near as bad as when he was not proud of you.
Jeff made All-State 3 years in high school. Once at UT, despite having never been a drum major for us at Central, Jeff set a personal goal of becoming UT drum major. So he began trying out the first year he was there. He finally succeeded.
I tried out every year for drum major until I got it. I left and called my parents and let them know that they needed to try to find some football tickets that year. And it was just...
Now, which year was that?
1997.
Fall 1997.
Fall 1997. It was Peyton Manning's senior year. Yeah. He conducted my band, occasionally.
And like so many other band students, lessons gained from the focus and effort required to learn music have helped him in all aspects of his life.
It doesn't always have to be fun. And that's true. You know, band is fun a lot of times, but if it's going to be fun, it's going to be fun because you've worked there and you've prepared it to be fun.
If it's going to be really good, it can't be fun
all the time. The way he handled discipline was in such a way that there was no question about it. He didn't have to tell you he was in charge. He didn't have to say, I'm the band director and you'll do as I say. And he didn't have to say any of those things. He carried himself in such a way that you knew that without question. And the discipline he had was not forced. I don't think, literally, probably no more than 3 times did I ever hear him raise his voice. He didn't have to. He could stand on that podium. He was a very imposing figure. And I'm telling you, one of the funniest things is getting yelled at by a training instructor, a drill instructor, or anything like that. You talk about a leg up. I had a tremendous leg up because I'd had the best. People want to, it's almost like they're trying to tell you how in charge they are. Well, someone like Norman Woodall didn't have to tell you anything. You knew it instinctively. The stories he tells, I remember a lot of them, but one of them in particular on how to judge people or how not to judge people. He was talking about being overseas, it was probably Europe, and he was on a train, or he was waiting for a train, and he had just purchased a recording of some variety that he really coveted. He really wanted this for a long time, and he'd found it. And the janitor that was there was sweeping up and doing those kind of things, and he turned to Mr. Woodall and he said, "Oh, what is it you have there?" And Mr. Woodall said, well, he honestly kind of blew him off. He's like, well, you know, this is a very obscure classical composition. He said, the janitor said, no, that's not what I asked you. What is it? And so finally, I guess out of just curiosity or just to get him off his back, Mr. Woodall said, well, this is so-and-so. And the janitor hummed it to him. And I'll never forget that because you just never know. You never know what experiences someone else is going to bring. And you can't judge it by what they're doing or how they act or how they talk. It's stories like that that you're sitting there going, well, you know, I'd sure like to be playing another piece of music, but I wouldn't remember what we played that day. But I'll remember that story, and I'll remember it for a long time. As far as the Central Band, it meant so much to me because of what we got to do, the people that I was around. The Central Band has been built on the backs of thousands and thousands of people who have given their best while they sat in those chairs. And I just am very proud to have been a part of it. It's something that is certainly one of the best things I've experienced in my life.
After being elected to various ETSBOA positions over the years, Norman was quite pleased when, late in his career, he was elected ETSBOA president. He served 2 terms from 1994 to 1997. By 1994-95, the style of uniforms had changed once again, and the more traditional look of the old 1971 uniforms was back in fashion. Even the students began asking to wear the older look rather than the less formal uniforms purchased in the 80s. You can see the mix of uniforms in these fall 1994 views. At the end of the 1980s, the Knoxville City School System had disbanded, and all the schools had been turned over to the county school system for operation. Central, Gresham, and the feeder schools were now once again county schools. When we came back into the fold of the Knox County schools, the band programs were scaled back to starting in the 6th grade rather than the 4th. I did all the recruiting at Gresham now, and although our numbers continued to increase, the loss of training before high school finally began to show. In addition, the larger program at Gresham meant that I could no longer come to the high school for band during the day. Norman had no assistants. He took the entire band, 133 of them, to Band Festival in 1995. The band got a 2 on the Holt's First Suite in E-flat. For 1995-96, Norman finally was able to use a smaller group and had more success at Festival. He went back in grade 6 for the first time in years with a very good performance. The scores were split 1s and 2s with a 1 in sight reading on a program drawn from the 1975 TMEA performances, 2 movements of Lincolnshire Posy, and the Charles Ives Variations on America. During these years, Norman began requesting a 3rd position for the program. The large numbers at both Gresham and Central certainly warranted it, but we were unsuccessful at getting this additional staffing. During the mid-1990s, Norman began contemplating his retirement. He was really in no hurry to leave, even though he was now in his late 50s. He still loved working with the band and enjoyed being with the students and seeing them grow up in the program. The 1997 group earned straight superiors on stage and in sight reading on Original Suite, and we were finally successful in adding an additional position to the program in fall 1997. Wayne Ackerman was the first to hold this new position. However, Wayne left after 1 year to take a high school band position in Kentucky. Since Wayne Ackerman, Kevin Ross, Laura Borchert, Adam Featherston, and Lisa Burden have filled that post. Other scenes from the 1997-1998 band include our flags. On the left here is Celeste Wedekind. Her family has also had several band members, and Mother Michelle is to this day a frequent substitute teacher at Gresham. This flag is Kim Carell, daughter of David Carell from the 1960s bands. Kim started as a 6th grade beginner at Gresham and has been a music major at ETSU. Concert Festival for Spring 1998 was a Superior on Folk Song Suite in grade 5. In fall 1998, the movie October Sky was filmed in the Knoxville area, with Gresham used for several scenes. Early in the film, there's a scene of a football practice, and 16 of our students comprise a marching band practicing in the background. They played the 1971 6/8 time arrangement of Red and Black. If you watch this, don't blink. It only lasts about 10 seconds. The filmmakers almost didn't use the actual recording of our band performing because they thought it sounded too good to represent a typical high school band. And with the 1998-1999 academic year, we come to the end of another era. Norman turned 62 and retired in the summer of 1999, after 40-plus years of teaching band. Here is his last marching band, posed in the gymnasium. Katie Brown, the drum major on the left, was one of several students who spoke at Norman's memorial service. Here is Norman's last faculty photo in the school annual. He talked to me that fall about his possible retirement, although he was still reluctant. Norman did not tell any students he was retiring and swore me to secrecy. He preferred to leave quietly, without sentimental events, and I honored this request. He always told me his greatest wish would be granted if the band increased in accomplishment and awards after his departure. All his concern about retirement was unfounded. He loved it. He traveled, went to concerts, played golf, did quite a bit of judging at festivals and contests, and generally had the time of his life. The saddest part was that Norman passed away in August 2002 after only 3 years of retirement. It ended up that I spent 17 years working with Norman as his assistant. He was a great musician. When he was teaching in Chattanooga at Hickson, he spent 10 years playing French horn in the Chattanooga Symphony. Then when he came to Knoxville, he spent 10 years playing horn in the Knoxville Symphony. And all along the way, he played dance jobs on bass. He did that both in Chattanooga and in Knoxville too. Because he'd spent all these years in the symphonies and had talked to all these professional players, he knew more about the ins and outs of every instrument than any band director I've ever known. He loved going to concerts, band concerts, orchestra concerts. He went to the Midwest Band Festival every year that he could, and always while he was there, he'd get tickets to the Chicago Symphony. That was one of his things that he loved to do. But he also loved travel. He loved art. Every year in Chicago, he'd go to the art museum too. The first year or two after he passed away, I, about once a month, would be driving home from school, and there'd be something funny that had happened that day. And I would think, you know, I ought to call Norman and tell him about that, and then it would come back to me. We had a really strong collaboration. He really treated me as a true professional and valued my input, even though I was the assistant director. There were so many things that he let me be in charge of. Many years I picked out the music for the marching band and wrote the arrangements and did a lot of the rehearsals. As he always said, I'm not jealous of that podium. You can get up there and conduct this band anytime you want to. We had some great conversations, everywhere from before band to sitting up half the night at band camp at Maryville College listening for the scamper of feet upstairs of students out of their dorm rooms. One thing, too, that always struck me about Norman was how much he loved being a band director and how much he loved being the band director at Central. He was very proud to tell anybody anywhere in the world that he was the band director of Central High School. And sometimes we'd sit around and have conversations, and you know how you sometimes talk about things like, well, if I won the lottery and had unlimited funds, what would I do with the money? And something that Norman told me once was that if he had unlimited funds, that one of the things he'd do would be conduct a band. He said, I'd hire a professional concert band to come in once a week or so and just let me conduct them and work with them. He just loved directing a band and loved working up music with musicians. Another band director who was a mutual friend of Norman's and mine once said about Norman that he was a master band director. And I think that pretty much says it all. When I first came, I was only 29 years old and had only taught for 7 years. And so it was like over the course of the time we worked together, our relationship evolved. At first he was a mentor, and then he became a colleague, and then we really ended up as friends. After hearing so much of the history of this band, here's an update on the current status of the group. We have again purchased new uniforms. Here's a look at 4 decades of uniforms, starting with the 1958 model, bought before the band's Chicago trip that summer. The 1971 uniform, bought for the opening of the new high school. The 1984 uniform, and the current uniforms, bought in 2000, were actually inspired by the design of the 1958 model. Both have red jackets with 2 curved rows of buttons. This 2002 view of our marching percussion section includes more multi-generational connections. Bob Luttrell's granddaughter, Heather, Doug Brown's son, Kenneth, Brian and Mary McDonald's nephew, John, and here's Laurel Black, Joe Black's granddaughter. Laurel and her brother Joe were both in the band, and Laurel made all-state band like her father and grandfather before her. In fact, she made it all 3 years she was eligible, and the first year that she was there, Norman Woodall was in attendance for her performance. Like her father, she played a concerto with the band her senior year and was the 2004 Odell Willis Award recipient. Here's the entire family at that special night in spring 2004. The youngest member, Grace Black, is still in the band, currently a 9th grade flute player. After years of grade 5 performances, the band, under current director Joshua Jackson, is earning wide acclaim, especially for its concert band performances. The second band of primarily 9th graders earns regular superior ratings at festival in grade 4. And the symphonic band achieved its first superior in grade 6 in 17 years in spring 2004. Mr. Jackson now takes 2 groups in grade 6 with superior results. The most exciting news is that in 2006, the band will again perform at 2 prestigious music conferences. The group will perform in April for the Tennessee Music Educators Association annual meeting, and in February for a national audience, a joint conference of the National Band Association and the College Band Directors National Association. For this high-profile conference performance, Central was selected as one of only 6 bands to perform out of dozens of audition tapes submitted by bands from all over the country. As I finish this history, I think often of the thousands of former students who have taken part in the activities of this band. Norman used to encourage the graduating seniors every year to strive to keep a lifelong interest in music and to be concert goers and supporters of music in the schools. In fact, a 2003 proposal to severely reduce the middle school band program in Knox County was strongly protested by parents all over Knoxville, but nowhere more stridently than in Fountain City. In conclusion, thank you all. I hope you will always remember your band experiences fondly.
I don't know what had happened in my life if it hadn't been for Odell and the Central Band. But it was very important to me, still very important to me. I can't imagine cutting band out of schools.
Well, that's the reason that we live where we do now, is trying to get zoned for the Central school systems. We want our kids to go to Central High School.
Fourth generation of Central Band coming on, Dave.
Maybe a first.
So Mr. Woodall was a very well-known man around our house. His name came up at our house many, many, many times. Joe thoroughly enjoyed it. He just, of course, Joe just felt like the sun rose and set, Mr. Woodall. People of Fountain City are real funny. We're so cliquish in certain points, in certain ways. But here you take Mr. Willis and Mr. Woodall, and you're going to be the same way. They just don't forgive.
Centennial year, the oldest public school in Knox County, Central High School.
Hey, Dorothy.
Scoreboard operator,